Good morning. This is Munira from Chicagoland. My company is Kismet Ventures Inc. in Chicago, and I am at this point in my life trying to find value to give and to take with people that I am around. And I feel that I'm finding so many people that infuse values to people's lives in such a way that they either know it or they don't know it, and they don't want to promote themselves. So I am out here to expose them, to promote them, and to value them, and expose them in the right way, because we really don't promote ourselves enough, and we don't know how. So maybe this is my calling for this moment, where I'm bringing people in and I'm interviewing them to learn more about them and their services. I'm here today with Diane Caine from
Caine Coaching and Consulting. Thank you, Munira.
And she's out in Virginia?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
So how are you? Thank you for joining us today.
Munira, I'm great, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for inviting me into this conversation and doing this for all of us. As a matter of fact, you're right, especially as women, it's such a hard time. We've been trained to diminish what we do, and we do wonderful, wonderful things. So thank you so much for exposing us in the way you are.
Thank you. So Diane, the first question I ask is, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Tell you a little bit about me. Well, I was born and raised here in Rhode Island. I am the mother of 2 daughters and the bonus mom of 2 adult boys. And so we have lots of fun in our household. We've got a 21, a 20, a 19, and a 17, and a brand new grandson who is a month old, and is a joy to my life and a good distraction too.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what is your product? I know I can see you have a John Maxwell logo. So you are a team member.
Yes, I am. And so I joined the John Maxwell team back in 2012. So I've been within the team for quite some time. Coaching is my passion. I am a product of the product. I was coached back in the early 2000s. Oh, goodness, Munira, I feel old when I say that. And then again in 2007, when I was going through the divorce from my daughter's father. It was my entry into single motherhood, which I didn't ever anticipate. And so trying to figure out how to be a corporate executive and a single mom, and really process my own hurt at the same time, I knew that I needed to do something. And so I hired a coach to help me through that transition. And after 3 or 4 months of training or coaching with that individual, helped me really right my ship, as I say. And as I did that, I realized that was something that I was doing all along when I was managing my teams and working in customer service. So it was something that was on the back burner of what I wanted to do. But it was not something that I would pursue immediately. And then in 2012, when the John Maxwell team formed, that's when I said, oh, that's what I want to do. So I've been using it. I was people developing in my career and in corporate America up until 2016. And then when I was freed in a transition, it was my opportunity to go full time and build my business. So that's what I'm doing. I'm building my coaching business and helping women, empower women, and encourage them and equip them to be their best selves.
Wonderful. So, there's a lot of women who is empowering women, but each one has a unique product, right? Mm-hmm. Something you touched on, you said that you hired a coach while you were transitioning towards your divorce. Most people will say you need a counselor.
Yes.
So how are you as a coach different from a counselor?
So I had a counselor as well at the same time. The counseling was really much more the emotional piece, the how to navigate with my children. My children were young at the time. They were 7 and 3. So really how to help them cope and help me cope as a mom and deal with my own emotional baggage at the same time. And from the coaching standpoint, so it's really much more that clinical side of it in helping deal with those emotions, where when I hired the coach, it was much more really re-recognizing who I was internally and kind of clearing out the fog of this new path that I was going down. So there were two tools in the toolbox, but treated differently. When I was doing the counseling, it was much more a lot of definitely that deep down emotional baggage, which helped me kind of process a little bit more on the coaching side of it, where it was really re-identifying who Diane was versus Diane the mom. It was Diane the woman that was coming out in my coaching sessions, and how to adapt professionally from that standpoint.
So are you a full-time coach?
I do. I mostly coach small groups. I like to call them growth groups. And I'm doing some one-on-one coaching as well as speaking out at some women's networking events as well.
Okay. So what do you instill into women?
Using their and finding their voice. For myself, as I grew up throughout the corporate world, I didn't have a good leader in front of me. So what I've been really doing is talking about how to have a really good growth conversation, a good coaching conversation. A lot of times in my own experience, I had great bosses, but I didn't have a lot of good leaders around me. And a lot of times I was kind of on my own figuring out how to do it. You model what you like out of the bosses that you had, and then you understand what you don't want to model going forward. And so that was really my push on learning about leadership and growth in the process. And so when I'm talking to other women, especially younger women, I notice that we have a tendency to be seen and not heard. And what I encourage them to do is to be brave and use their voice. A lot of it was feedback that was given to me when I was in my corporate career. I knew what needed to be done. I had the experience, I had the skills, but a lot of times I would be afraid to speak up. And so I help women find that voice of their own and encourage them to just be brave and put it out there, and also to help other women around them. Because the environment that I had been in was competitive. Women were coming through, and you acted like the guy and you were competitive, or you didn't necessarily help the woman around you. And so I encourage other women to be there for each other, because that's what we need to do, is help empower each other and to move forward. So that's what I've been concentrating on mostly lately.
So two things that you said. One thing you said that you're helping women find their voice. And in corporate America, sometimes when women do speak up, you have no, they don't like that. Mm-hmm. So, there's a fine line between, okay, you are crossing that line, and you'll be out soon, or yes, you're growing. Mm-hmm. So how then does a woman who is looking for her voice differentiate that and then tackle this head on?
It's really, what I found is bringing them up to the table. If you'll notice, I know Sheryl Sandberg had written the book Lean In, and that was really kind of recognition for me about, it's scary to speak up in a conference room. It's scary to speak up in a conference room, or even on a conference call. A lot of times, in my experience, what we were having lots of conversations. We had lots of deadlines to meet. We had lots of things that needed to be done. But a lot of times when you're in that environment of, I know that this is probably a no, this could be a game changer or a showstopper, and we need to speak up and say, oof, let's rethink that. Really encouraging them to take a deep breath and really insert yourself. Sometimes when you're in that conversation, when you've got a lot of, Munira, you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. We've got a lot of voices in the room, and we've got the dominant voices in the room. Being able to sometimes just interject and say, I have something to say. But also in helping people understand that, there's your side of the story, and then there's my side of the story, and then there's the middle, and we need to come there. And so in approaching that conversation of, from my perspective, this is how I'm seeing it. Have you considered instead of kind of getting into that's not going to work, and really having a conversation that can be heard.
So
and how can you find that?
So don't put your point across, but massage it in such a way where people are listening to you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And really trying to understand that other person's perspective. You know, one of the things that I was actually just talking about recently I posted it on my Facebook page because it was part of me actually in a conversation that I needed to learn to shut my mouth and listen to the other person's perspective. It's the beach ball. And so when you have a beach ball, you know, if you're looking at it, what is this? Vertical, horizontal. Vertical. Yeah.
Horizontal, vertical.
Yes. So if you're looking at it vertically.
Yeah, from up above.
Yeah. So you can only see the one side. You can only see your side of the story. I can't necessarily see your side of the story. But when we move it horizontally, now you can see all of the colors of the beach ball. And I've used that on multiple occasions within my teams and even within some board groups that I've worked with. And that really kind of helps because if we haven't seen that other person's perspective, you know, there's those two sides of the story. So how can we help with having that perspective and bring that other person's perspective or even the client's perspective, especially when we're talking about something that's going to come to the end? You know, theoretically, it looks like it should work and it's great, but what about the impact from the other side? Because I'm looking at it from the customer side and you might be just looking at it from the process side. Sure. And so we've got to come to that middle ground and really, and sometimes that's a difficult conversation when you're going to say, that's not going to work for the customer, and here's why. And how do we do that? And even in our relationships, Munira, I mean, we have hard conversations with our spouses, with our children, with our family. And how do we do that? And how do we empower somebody to say, this is what I need and this is what I'm asking for?
Well, that's awesome. So do you now go train into corporate offices and train women especially, or do you do workshops? I mean,
I am working on a workshop for August. I'm preparing that around resilient women and being able to be brave and have that conversation. So I'm still forming that right now. And what I'm doing mostly is I am doing some lunch and learn sessions with some small business owners and helping to have what does a good coaching conversation look like? How does that influence come into play, and how do we help the people around us be better employees and better individuals? So I've been doing that. And then just some of the small growth groups is around just really personal growth as well. Okay.
And then you said that you started with John Maxwell, right?
Yes.
So we know John Maxwell is a huge leadership coach, and there's no other in that realm.
Mm-mm.
He's the giant of us all. And he's given us a lot of tools because I'm a part of JMT as well.
Yes.
So my question is that why did you choose him as a leadership coach, one? And two, when you say that you are building leaders and you're teaching young women and women in general to become leaders, how is that affecting them, and how do you massage the John Maxwell items into your training?
That's a wonderful question. So why John Maxwell? It was a total values match for me. I was through the Franklin Covey organization. That was the only coaching that I had known. And I'm a learning nerd. I like to learn. If you look at my library, it's how to be productive, how to grow. I've got women's pieces over here, and then children. So the three were always intermingled. And so my first introduction to John was his book, Today Matters. And Munira, you know a little bit of the story on why Today Matters to me. Back when I was in college, I had lost my fiance in a car accident. And so when I saw that book, Today Matters, that's my guiding light for how I operate in the world, and just knowing that tomorrow is not promised, so let's do our best to be present. And so that was really my first introduction to John. And then when the John Maxwell team was formed and the opportunity was there, and I had gotten a minute with Maxwell, what the John Maxwell team stands for and what John's values stand for, our total values match. It's about adding value to people. It's about serving others, and it's about loving others where they're at. And so really that was my decision to join the John Maxwell team. And then moving into the executive director role like you are, as we've grown through the process, I do use a lot of John's tools. 15 Laws of Growth is my favorite starting point. Developing the leader within you is also my favorite starting point, because it starts with us. You know, we can only control us and our own responses. And so those are the two biggest tools that I like to use. And when I was talking about the lunches that I'm putting on for the small business owner, I'm really using the coaching for leaders piece, because there's just not a lot of that discussion. Our job is to bring the next person along, and a lot of times we're so concentrating on the production aspects of it, of getting the customer taken care of getting the product out the door, of making the sale. We're focusing so much on that production part of it that we're forgetting that we really need to develop the people that are around us. And so I love to use that when I'm talking to a business owner, because, you know, I myself grew through, it's easier to do it myself than it is to invest the time to show somebody else. But in the end of the day, that's not going to move your business forward. It's not going to give the business owner the opportunity to work on the business instead of in the business. And we're not leaving a legacy. I mean, we're going to burn ourselves out if we're not bringing up that next person. And how do you effectively do that? And so those are really the three pieces that I've been using from the John Maxwell toolbox that we have.
So most people in sales, you know, I believe that everybody's selling.
Of course we are.
I've come across this very, it's an awareness that I came across because I read something and I said, you know, you're right. This author is right. Because we are selling at any given point. We are selling ourselves. We are looking for our jobs, and we have to be the best candidate to get that job. So we are selling either, if not ourselves, our souls to the best company, or our skills, right? So we are doing that all the time. And so we are in sales, but we just don't have a label that I'm in sales, right?
Right.
So most people, if you go into a business and you talk to them about leadership, they don't think that they need to be a leader. Why? You know, most bosses, if they are a small business, will say, well, he's going to take over my job if I teach him the leadership skills. So what do you tell business owners who have that mentality?
I experienced it just even within my corporate career, because there's that perception that I have all the knowledge, which means I'm irreplaceable, or, you know, I have all the knowledge, which sometimes gives me power. And it's wonderful that you have all of the knowledge, but now you've confined yourself to this box. You are constantly chained to, you know, this thing, because if there's a problem, then they're coming to you. There's no boundaries around. There's no boundaries around. You've made yourself indispensable, but now you've trapped yourself, really. And in sharing that power, sharing that knowledge, you're actually multiplying yourself. So instead of confining yourself to just you and the knowledge only being in that one vessel, now you've multiplied yourself. And wouldn't you rather multiply yourself and expand yourself? And sharing your knowledge, you're sharing and expanding the knowledge, and that doesn't diminish you, that actually increases you. And having those conversations with people, and, you know, some people have the awareness that oh, I do need to do that, and other people just don't necessarily have that awareness, and they like to have that control, and they like to keep that position, I guess, of power, and eventually what will happen is you're going to lose the talent that's around you. And, you know, you don't want to do that when you're trying to grow your business. You want to be able to retain the talent and multiply yourself.
So I worked for a law firm here locally, and there was a lot of turnover. Every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And there was, you know, constantly a flow of people going in and out, and everything was so hush-hush. you're doing a project with somebody and then you find out that he's no longer there, he's gone.
Yeah.
That's just, to me was very, it just was mind blowing because nobody stuck there. If they didn't get the experience, this was a law firm and they were recruiting from law school, and then once the young ones graduated and understood the scope of work or understood, I don't know if it was the overall structure. When they realized that they didn't want to work there anymore, there was again a turnover. And I discussed that with the bosses, and I said, you have a lot of turnover. We need, and so why do you not do some things to change them? Well, one of the things, because I worked there, I realized that there was no empowering the everything that you needed to do, even an email that was sent. And I understand it's a law firm.
Right.
You had to draft an email and send it to the person above you. They would read, they would not make corrections. They would just send back to you and say, fix it. Now, I don't know what fix it means. So tell me, so that was a lot of communication skills that was missing.
Right.
And I brought it up, I said, I can't work like this. If you have to give me feedback. And so they then told me that I was crossing the line. So that voice that I had was being suppressed.
Right.
And I said, so what you have to give me some direction. And they expected me to stay there till the person above me gave me an answer.
Wow.
And that just didn't work for me. And so then because things happened and the ownership changed and there were things that were happening, so they laid off a few people and I was one of them, and that was it. But then I look back at that experience because that was to me at first a failure, but then it was also a learning curve for me because this is something that I don't want to do. But one of the biggest pieces that was missing was communication and growth, because they didn't empower their employees to do what was right. Because all I needed to do was pick up the phone and ask. I had to do that. And they didn't like that because you're too forward. How am I too forward? If I need answers, right?
Right.
But then I found out this is a law firm. And the more hours they spend on something, they can bill for that. So that was their tactic, but they wouldn't tell me that. If you had told me that, then I would be slowing down, right?
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's so counterintuitive when we're trying to be efficient, right?
It is.
Explain the turnover.
And so that was one experience. But then the other, so you have two extremes. And then I was working with another company in corporate America. And what they did was, I would give my team members power of attorney, if you will, to make smaller decisions, on their own. I mean, if you need an answer, just think about it, what you think is right, because you're a manager of this place. Don't wait for me to get out of a meeting, so you're now wasting people's time.
Right.
So they became so empowered, and they did such a good job that then my position was eliminated. So two extremes, but it's like, where do you draw that line also? Because now if you really need a job,
Right.
And I was the type of person that I liked going to different corporate offices. And, I worked in the hospital realm a lot. You met the CEO, the CFO, the director of the pharmacies. I just enjoyed that piece so much.
Yes.
But, when the law office changed me to a desk, I felt suppressed. I felt I was drowning, and I couldn't do that. I needed to be out in the field. So, so when you're saying people have to find their voice, especially women, where in this men's world is the right voice? And how do you then say, because, I jumped out of corporate world, I jumped out of the law office, and I said, I think this is God's way of saying, I've given you enough chances to figure this out. You need your own business now, get into that realm. So I did that. But not everybody can do that, right?
Right.
Some people they need the income that's coming in. And how then do they just keep quiet, or do they just follow the rules? Or how I'm trying to figure out what to empower the women who are going to listen to this.
Yes. And so here's what I found, because John, one of the things that John teaches us all the time is to add value and to look from that other person's perspective, but to ask questions. And what I have found, especially when we're talking about when it's a man's world, human beings operate the same way, but men are much more direct than women are. We use a lot of words to explain where we're going. Where my husband, for instance, is, can you just get to the point? I don't need to know the whole story. I don't need to know the colors. I just need to know the facts. And so what I've started to encourage women to do, and even in myself, when I started learning, the personality styles and those types of things, is number one, understanding myself, but number two was understanding that person's perspective. What did they need? Understanding their personality style, and really asking the question, how can I effectively communicate with you? Is it via email? Is it a phone call? Like you were saying, you learned that, oh no, if an email went back and forth, it added on to the hours versus you picked up the phone because you wanted it to be the quickest pass and let's get it done. And to understand kind of just some of the rules of engagement, especially when I was working with my male peers and my male counterparts, was really what worked best for them, listening and just asking a lot of questions to help understand where they were coming from. I found the more that I asked questions and listened to those answers, and especially kind of saying, how can I best help you, or what's the best way to communicate? That opened the door to having much more effective communication. And then just kind of maybe also knowing the time and the place, thinking about the kind of conversation that you want to have. If it's a development conversation that you want to have, making sure, take the initiative, put the time on the calendar to have that conversation, and be very clear on how you want to use that time. When we were in more of a conference room setting, a team setting, and understanding kind of sometimes sitting back and observing, but then, knowing when to interject and what was appropriate and what the course of action was going for from that standpoint. But, when you're not sure, ask questions. I think that's probably the biggest piece that has helped me be successful and go, I don't, and putting the ownership back on you. I might not understand, so can you help me clarify? And making sure that understanding is there too. And if you don't understand, then say, I'm not sure. And I want to make sure that I get the information that you're looking for, or I want to make sure that we're getting to the same part at the table. We want to get to agreement. But don't be afraid to disagree either. Agree to disagree. That's okay. That is okay. As adults.
So you are in Rhode Island.
Yes.
How does anybody contact you?
They can actually find me through my website. It's www.johnzmaxwellgroup.com/Diane M. Caine, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook under my name, Diane M. Caine. I'm in those two places as well. Or call me.
I'll call you. Okay. You have a business Facebook page?
I do. It's Diane M. Caine is my business Facebook page.
Great.
And you'll see Caine Coaching and Consulting in my header.
Okay, wonderful. And so any last words you want to leave our viewers with?
I want to say be brave. Say what you need to say in a way that can be heard. And, growth is a consistent and intentional, never-ending process. And so stay in the process, give yourself grace, and we all have greatness inside of us. So find it and go change the world. And Munira, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and perspective with us today, adding value to the women and everybody who's going to listen to this. I think this needs to be heard. And thank you for your time. And we are out.